Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us. Connecting skilled workers with in-demand and available jobs in Northeast Ohio can be challenging for businesses. Each year, Team NEO, a private nonprofit economic development organization, focuses on the demand and supply imbalance in the region's workforce. This year, Team NEO's Aligning Opportunities report looked specifically at kindergarten through 12th grade students and young adults and how they could factor into closing the talent gap in our area. One takeaway from the report was the need to engage young people sooner by showing them potential career pathways and providing real-world learning opportunities. Today, we'll start the show talking about the report and the workforce landscape for young people in Northeast Ohio. And then later in the show, we hear from Dr. Amy Acton, who is running for the Democratic nomination for Ohio governor. Joining me for the Talent Gap conversation in studio, we have Jacob Duritsky. He's the Vice President of Strategy, Research, and Talent for Team NEO. Jacob, thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And in studio, we also have Christine Taylor. She's the Vice President of Programs and Partnerships for Stark Education Partnership.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Christine. Now, the organization led one of the focus groups for the report. And by phone, we have Sierra Hudson. She's a senior human resources specialist at Powell Industries in North Canton. The company makes custom electrical power distribution equipment. Thanks for joining us here on The Sound of Ideas.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having us.
We also have Tony Best joining us by phone. Tony is a recent high school graduate who now works as an electrical assembler at Powell. Hi, Tony. Welcome to The Sound of Ideas.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, if you in our audience would like to join the conversation, if you have a question or a comment, you can give us a call at 866-578-0903. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org or send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Jacob, I'll ask you first. Why focus this year on young adults for the talent report?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our 9th edition, and over the past 8 years, we've looked at a variety of issues. We've looked at women in the labor force, issues of race, issues of veterans. But as we kind of peel back the onion and take a look at the core opportunities we have in Northeast Ohio, one of the things we've realized is we can't grow our way out of this. So if we want to align people to jobs, we have to start at a much younger point in time, and that means really making sure young people understand the opportunities that exist in the marketplace, and we give them opportunities to connect to those jobs when they're at a much, much younger point in their career decision making.
So I want to drill in on that a little bit about young people having an idea of what careers look like in this region. That's just something that doesn't exist right now?
Oh, it does. I think it does, but it exists in different pockets in different ways. And I would say generally the way we frame it is young people particularly have lots of interest, right? They sort of see what they want to be, but it doesn't always align with their aptitude, nor does it always align with the job market. And so I think giving them ways at a much earlier point in time to think about what do you like doing, and then what does that translate to in a career, and a really practical example of that. Someone might be might have interest in being engaged in healthcare, right, but have very little interest in blood or very little interest in math and science. Well, that's great. A third of the jobs in healthcare are clinical jobs, but the other 2/3 are marketing or engineering or security. So exposing them to the fact that you can be passionate about something and there are multiple career paths that can get you there, and really planting that seed at a much younger point in time.
Now, Christine, Stark Education Partnership has been part of engaging young people in career pathways. So can you tell us about that process?
Yes, absolutely. So a little over 3 years ago, our president, Dr. John Richard, interviewed about 100 different stakeholders within Stark County, both educational leaders as well as workforce leaders. And what came of those conversations was a desire to better utilize our talent coming out of our schools to fill open positions that were in need. And so Stark Education Partnership, which was founded in 1989, has always supported K-12 education, but a new initiative was born, the Start Career Pathways Initiative. And to Jacob's point, we utilize a resource that helps us determine students' aptitude with relation to careers as well as their interests. And then we partner within the business community to get those students to have real-world career experiences.
Now, Christine, I want to ask you, the study from Team NEO focused on kindergarten through 12th grade. What age are you starting this process at?
Absolutely. The majority of our work begins at middle school. This assessment I mentioned is called Youth Science, and there's a shortened version at the middle school. And then we ask our 12 school district partners to give every freshman the assessment so that as they begin their high school career, decide what coursework they want to take, and decide what their pathway might be, whether that be college, career technical education, or direct to workforce, that they can start planning earlier if they have the direction and want to be supported in those means.
So let me ask you what you're seeing in Stark when it comes to attracting younger workers and entry-level employees. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
I think that the biggest challenges that are across the board are soft skills preparation. Many times, if we do get young people into those experiences, they just haven't had the experience to know how to talk to individuals, make eye contact. Business owners are often telling me that we will do any technical skills training with an individual if they come to work on time, if they're interested in the company and in the work, then we will prepare them for future success.
So when we're talking about soft skills, you're talking about those interpersonal skills?
Yes, essentially preparedness skills like timeliness, work ethic, those types of things.
Okay. Sierra, let's bring you into the conversation now. What kind of opportunities exist at PAL Industries for young people who might be interested in potentially working there?
Yeah, so we partner with SAP to allow students, high school, 16 years and older specifically, to work part-time during their high school years. And then depending on when they start, they can transition to full-time during their summers, back to part-time during their senior year, and then full-time upon graduation. And typically those roles would be entry-level roles such as electrical and mechanical assemblers. So using hand and power tools, reading blueprints to assemble what we build.
When you're talking about finding opportunities for young people, Sierra, in a manufacturing setting, is that particularly challenging? How have you been able to work through that?
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think with the tight labor market that we're in, we as a business have just had to kind of figure out how to adjust to, allowing high school students to work here, specifically in the safety aspect, focusing more on a high school safety while they're in the shop. And then also the part-time schedule. So that's not something that, a manufacturer is accustomed to traditionally. But again, we found with the tight labor market, we have to figure out a way to allow part-time students to work here.
Tony, when you were a student, which was not that long ago, you're a recent high school graduate, when did you start thinking about your future career?
I had been thinking about my future career since I was probably a freshman heading into high school, because I had always thought that I wanted to be an engineer or engineer or an electrician or something in that field.
Okay, so you were thinking about electrical or maybe some kind of manufacturing work for a while now. Do you remember what was it that got you particularly interested in that area?
So my grandfather was an electrician, and I had always been fascinated by just like building things, putting things together, and seeing how everything actually combined to make something new.
And now you work at Powell. So I want to know, how's that going for you and how does that fit into your potential future plans?
So I started at Powell about 9 months ago, and it was after being toured here by the SEP. And I came in, thought it was an amazing place. They had a bunch of benefits, and I really wanted to work here. So I called them and got an interview set up. And eventually I got hired in, and now my plan is to work here for a while until I go to college, because they'll pay for a portion of my college, and then work here afterward and continue to be here.
And when you say SEP, Tony, you're referring to the Stark Education Partnership. So can you just tell us a little bit about what you remember about that tour that you went on?
So I remember it was me and somewhere around 15 other kids, I want to say, where they toured us around the building. They showed us all sorts of stuff that they make here. They went into a little bit more detail about what they actually do than what we were told to begin with. And then afterward, they sat us down in the break room, told us about all their benefits, how their community works here, and after that, we went back to school for the day.
I want to share an email that's just come in from Logan from Akron, and then I'll open this up to the panel to get your comment on this. Logan from Akron says, per the topic of soft or personal skills, it would be good if youth would present themselves in a more professional manner, such as no green hair, no weird tattoos, no strange body punctures. I won't even consider hiring someone that looks like a zombie. Logan, thank you for sharing your perspective with us. First, I'll start with Sierra with Powell Industries. Sierra, do you have a reaction to that comment?
Yeah, absolutely. So appreciate the feedback, but when we look to hire somebody, we don't look for what they look like, right? We look for skills. We look for those, the soft skills and the technical skills, but more importantly, the soft skills. So regardless of the color of their hair, the tattoos that they do have, did they show up on time? Did they shake our hand upon arrival? And then if they do get hired, do they continue to show up on time every day and have a good attitude? If that's there, then we can train with the rest. So that is certainly not a part of our hiring decision.
And Tony, I'll ask you now, as someone who recently entered the full-time workforce, what does a comment like that make you think in terms of possibility for a potential employment situation?
So when it comes to things like that, where it's really a situation where you're looking at somebody from the base level instead of actually what their skills are. Because you could meet somebody who has green hair, piercings all over their bodies, maybe tattoos all over them, and they could be the best in their field, but if you're looking at them and saying, I don't want to hire them because they have these features, then you could be passing up on somebody who is amazing at their job. So it's really a situation of focus more on what they can do instead of what you think they can do.
Christine, I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond as well.
Absolutely. Well, I would support what both Sierra and Tony just shared. I will say that a number of our business partners do have concerns about the appearance of potential employees that are consistent with what the individual stated. I think that in some cases it depends on the industry sector and the environment as to whether those features, those characteristics are going to be considered. We do have healthcare partners, for instance, and they expect students to come and be dressed in a very specific way and to carry themselves in a specific way, whereas other partners are not in front of the public as much. And so the visual appearance of an employee is far less important than that employee's demeanor and their preparedness for the work environment.
Jacob, I'll ask you from Team NEO's perspective, when you were conducting this research and looking at, potential pathways for young people, was that type of issue considered in the study, the way people are expressing themselves today?
No, and I might frame it a little. I think Christine's right, Sierra's accurate. It depends on industry sector, and it depends on your openness to who you're thinking about and how you want to hire talent. But I will say, part of, I think, Logan's email addresses kind of the physical concern, but for employers that are creative and attracting talent, that's probably one of a series of issues that you're trying to think about and trying to deal with as an employer and what you can control. And for that worker, when you think about all the issues that keep people out of the labor force, wraparound services, lack of childcare, the cost, transportation, people are complex and they have complex issues, right? And I think figuring out a way to meet them where they are and build off of that is a good starting point. So I would hope that our employers are open to a diverse array of candidates who can offer them opportunities to fill some of these gaps that exist.
I want to ask you now about some of the things you found in your study, and particularly related, Jacob, to young people's interests and hobbies. How much should that be taken into consideration when trying to introduce them to career opportunities?
Personally, I think it's huge. My 11-year-old Harper, if she listens to this later, may or may not agree with me, but Harper, until she was about 10, wanted to be a social media influencer. Last year, she got really, really interested in becoming a nurse because, you can be it if you can see it. And she had some family who had some health-related issues and just saw this nursing environment and kind of struck her. So I think meet people where they are, but find out what they're passionate about, right? Okay, go beyond, kids are on social media and YouTube and TikTok. Great, yes, they are. What are they looking at? What's the content? My 11-year-old's obsessed with volleyball. We have conversations about, could that lead to physical therapy? Could that lead to coaching someday? What can you do in terms of volunteering or to get experience that can be applicable in what you want to do? So, the means, the technology, the interest, I think are often just a component of what's really, really interesting young people. And we have to find a way to connect with them at their level.
Jacob, I want to ask you now, in terms of introducing young people to career pathways and that being part of the equation, a lot of times when we talk about workforce development in Northeast Ohio, we're talking about keeping young people here and them not moving to other parts of the country. How big is that? And does any of it play into actually maybe recruiting people from other places?
Yeah, so a few things there. One, to keep people in Northeast Ohio, we know today we keep about half of students who at least go through our higher education programs, around 50%. The clearest pathway to keeping those folks here long term is an internship. And that first job. If you get a first job in a field that you enjoy, you are far more likely to be sticky for the long term in a place. So we kind of have the recipe for how we keep people here. Bringing people in from outside of the state, there are programs that do it. There's a Jobs Ohio relocation incentive that goes to companies to bring STEM-related workers in from around the country or around the world if they choose to. And that can be incredibly helpful, I think, in small pockets or in a limited way. But that's not going to change the overall trajectory of our economy, right? The issues that we faced over the past couple of decades, decline in population and aging workforce, the short-term solution is connecting more people, particularly young people who are here, to the opportunities that we see in the next 5 to 10 years, getting them experience, getting them that internship, or regardless of if they go right into the workforce or go to college, making sure that they're on track to think about what that first job is going to look like.
I want to remind people that we're talking about workforce development in the Northeast Ohio area, and particularly in the context of a new report from Team NEO that is talking about the development of career pathways for young people who are in school before college and also recent graduates, young adults. So if you want to participate in that conversation, the phone number to call is 866-578-0903. The email to send us a note is also soi@ideastream.org. And Christine, I want to ask you about that piece of it. We know what's happening here. We know that Stark Education Partnerships is working here to introduce these middle schoolers, freshmen to career opportunities here. And so we can control that, right, because we're here. So when we're talking about keeping young people in the area in Northeast Ohio, we've invested in those young people. Do you have any idea what's happening in other places around the country in terms of if that would be a piece of it? We can only control what's happening here in our region, but what's happening elsewhere? Any idea how that compares?
I don't have a lot of data from across the country. I will tell you that I've been in a number of meetings at the state level, Ohio, and the state reiterates the same thing a Stark Education Partner does, that we need to build our talent and we need to retain our talent because Ohio, Northern Ohio, and Stark County have tremendous industry and tremendous ability to draw industry to our area because of our cost of living and other features that we possess. And so I think that we are probably much like other parts of the country, but that Northern Ohio and Stark County offers a really specific benefit to industry to come. And we want to make sure that if they are in our area, that we are providing the workforce that they need.
Sierra, I want to ask you, the pandemic changed our relationship with work. How does Powell approach its culture to keep workers, especially younger ones?
Yeah, so that's always a challenge in manufacturing, and we faced that, during COVID. We had several people were able to work from home, and we are not able to offer that, especially in the manufacturing environment, right? Tony can't wire switchgear in his living room, for example. But that is one thing with the culture piece. Although we can't offer remote work, we showcase everything else that we can offer. So it's a good working environment. It's clean. It's safe. We have good benefits. We have a 401k, education assistance. And then I'm also part of coaching our senior leaders here all the way down to our supervisors and shop leads just on that culture piece and how we have to adapt to today's culture and really make it a good working environment. We're in a position where we don't have the option. We have to do that in order to keep up with our competitors.
And Tony, I'll ask you, how important is culture to you when it comes to choosing your employment? Was that a big piece of the puzzle when you chose to start working with Powell?
So, yeah, because when you go to work at a company and, the job can be fine where you're working there, you're just sitting there wiring things like I do or assembling things. You can sit there and work on that for hours. But what's really going to wear you down is if the people around you aren't actively participating and you're not making friends with them. Because at Powell, there's so many people here who I can talk to and have fun with while we're working, and we get to have fun experiences while we're at work. And if you're somewhere where every day you're just sitting there bored out of your mind doing your job, that's not going to make you want to stay. You're going to want to leave and go find something else to do.
Tony, I think you just hit on something that people who have been in the workforce for maybe a little bit longer really are realizing. You spend more time with your coworkers than you do with anybody else in your life. That is definitely a true statement there. Jacob, I want to ask you, right now the situation that we're in economically with a slowdown and tariffs and talks of a recession, does that put more emphasis on different jobs? How does that play into this puzzle?
Yeah, I think short term it does. When people are looking at opportunity, I think they're weighing sort of the long-term value proposition for themselves, right? Do you want a 4-year degree? Do you want a 2-year degree? Does a certificate or a training program get you to where you need to be? And I think having those conversations, of all the issues you mentioned, AI is a big one, right? That you didn't discuss, but that's going to influence the labor market in tremendous ways. So with all that noise going on around us, I think there are two elements. One, how do you make sure you're passionate and like what you do? Because that drives a lot of it. But then to the earlier point, how do we make sure you have those transferable soft skills and those assets that make you valuable over time and keep you in demand regardless of which career path you're choosing?
And what about the artificial intelligence piece? Did that play into this most recent study, especially when you're talking about young people and their engagement in the workforce?
We did, not directly related to young people, but as it relates to job postings. So for all the industry sectors we look at, manufacturing, IT, professional services, healthcare, we look at the number of jobs that include AI as one of the opportunities for workers. And it varies tremendously by industry sector. Professional services, finance, you'll see it relatively high, maybe in a third or so of job postings. Manufacturing right now, it's still relatively low. And there's a wide spectrum of people who are hiring. And if you look at jobs like marketing managers, it'll often suggest AI, but when you read it, it's just leveraging tools like ChatGPT, right, to be helpful in those roles. So it's there. And, Jeff Bezos said something that resonated in the past couple of weeks, which is it is going to affect us in the same way the internet did. But the speed at which it affects everyone in every industry sector and the adoption of it's going to be very, very different. And I think that's something to be mindful of, that as we're having these daily AI conversations, it's not transforming everything in the next 6 or 12 months. We have a little time to be thoughtful and plan around this.
We have less than a minute here, so I just want to ask one more question of Christine before we tie things up. What kind of things have you seen employers doing that are attracting talent, that are resonating with young people?
Employers are more and more engaged in this space. I believe that they're working to create mentorships, for instance. They'll pick up an employee. A couple of our business partners even pick a former educator to act as a mentor, both for prospective employees in this age group as well as for actual employees who are hired on. One of the biggest things that's grown in my world is career shadowing. When we started 3 years ago, it was a very small percentage of our corporate partners who would do that. And now I would say I have at least a third of our corporate partners, as well as we have 2 of our school districts who are innovators in this area and create a class and a space for their students to go out and have real world multi-visit career shadows in the workplace.
All right. That's all the time we have for the conversation today. Christine Taylor with Stark Education Partnership and Jacob Duritsky with Team Neo. Thank you for being with us in studio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the phone, Sierra Hudson with Powell Industries and Tony Best, a new employee with Powell Industries. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.